European Union as we now know it today came about to a number of treaties or agreements between European countries. Up to the horror of World War II, people wanted to find ways to ensure future peace and cooperation between different countries in Europe. So, in the late 1940s, the idea of a European community was discussed.
Europe can only be united by the heartfelt wish and vehement expression of the great majority.
Then, in 1951, the first union was formed between 6 countries: Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, Italy, and West Germany and France. They agreed to work together in the production of coal and steel, materials that were essential to rebuilding a military force. They felt that by working together they would avoid any future wars. By 1947, they believed that the Union was going so well, they decided to take things further. They decided to create the European Economic Community, EEC. This aimed to make it easier to buy and sell a wide range of goods, not just coal and steel. It also made it easier to travel, live, and work within this country. Soon, other countries wanted to join the EEC, and the membership started to grow. Some people in Europe were against their country joining and protested to keep their independence. Today we're going to discuss the question of how far was Europe integrated by the end of 1957. And now, directly from Berlin, Katharina Sieber.
Good day, Julia, and hello to all spectators. As you can see, I am on one of the highest terraces of West Berlin, close to the Brandenburger Tor. How exciting! The war has had great impacts on Germany until now. First of all, as you already know, Berlin has been split into 2. West Berlin, consisting the American, British and French sector, and Ost Berlin, or East Berlin as you're probably calling it, consisting the Soviet sector. Germany itself has also been split into 2, die Bundesrepublik Deutschland, Federal Republic of Germany, and die DDR, die Deutsche Demokratische Republik, German Democratic Republic. As you can clearly see, the post-war powers have failed to unify our beautiful country, Germany. This already had great impacts on the people living here in Berlin. For instance, the Berlin blockade, started by Stalin 8 years ago, was very tough for the people of West Germany. The Soviet leader decided to close roads, railways and waterways linking West Berlin to the western sector of Germany. And not only that, my dear friends, electricity was cut as well. This, of course, was very tough on the West Berliners. Luckily, American and British planes flew more than 200,000 flights to Berlin in 320 days, delivering vital supplies of food and coal to 2.2 million West Berliners. What a success! By early 1949, Stalin clearly understood that his blockade had failed and he ended it. As you asked, dear Julia, the Marshall Plan has indeed been received in Germany, but only in the western sector. People of the eastern sector are, however, part of the Comecon, a Soviet agency designed to stimulate Soviet economies. The economy of Western Germany has nonetheless way more success than the one of Eastern Germany. You can even talk about a post-war boom in West Germany. Generally speaking, I believe that the people are very disappointed that Germany has been split. The lives here of West and East are so different. One may even think that East and West Germany are 2 completely different countries. When going to the Soviet sector, you can see posters advertising socialism and the greatness of it. Everything appears to be grayer, and there even seems to be a different smell. They call it the Eastern smell. The 2 different currencies, the Deutsche Mark of the FRG and the Eastern Mark of the GDR, make even more differences between the 2 countries. Was für ein Chaos! Western Germany has always been part of the ECSC and is now part of the EEC. Western Germany just wants Europe to be unified. Eastern Germany, on the other hand, does not seem to be fond of this idea. I can tell you, West Germany is on the right path, but East Germany certainly not. There is, however, one question we need to ask ourselves. Can Europe be fully integrated as long as Germany is split into two?
And now from Belgium, Gaspar Loop.
So, as we already know, the so-called Benelux from the Association of Belgium, Netherlands and Luxembourg was created during the war and is nowadays considered to be one of the precursors of the almost existing European Economic Community, being the first united organization working for a better future, working for peace, working for the creation of a political Europe. The three countries were in fact the first to inspire this aspect of working together for the good of every member. We can quickly remind us that they were the first to make a monetary agreement already 14 years ago, fixing fair exchange rate between the Belgium and the Luxembourg franc and the Dutch guilder. This monetary agreement was followed only 1 year later in 1944 by the creation of a transitional Netherlands-Belgium-Luxembourg Customs Convention, which aimed to create a real, even though small, economic union by establishing free tariff, a community between the three countries, while still protecting barrier and national quotas. More than in the aim of completing an economic integration between the three members, the first aim of this union was to strengthen their position as small states under the threats of national conflicts. It was thus a way of finding themselves allies in countries with smaller status, vulnerable small states having already suffered from 2 wars. After the war, as everybody was feeling far from achieving a more extended cooperation in Europe, the Benelux then tried to enlarge its union beyond the barriers of economic agreement to achieve political common basis in the wish of making the first step for European integration. But they were also the first to face big disagreement between members and to realize how complex the creation of a united community is. The causes of these disagreements were to be the consequences of the war and the different position the three countries were like to adopt on international issues. So for each country individually, the resurgence of the post-World War II was a success. They had all been invaded by the Nazi regime, they had all suffered materially from the damage of the war, and they had all experienced an enormous Jewish deportation. However, the countries had to be rebuilt, demands were enormous after enormous unemployment, and people were enjoying the end of the war. As a result, Belgium, the Netherlands and Luxembourg faced an economic boom in almost every sector of industry, agriculture and commerce. Moreover, the creation of this economic union between them promoted more and better trade of goods and workforce, essential for the recovery of the nation. Workers, teachers and farmers interviewed at that time and who had been trying to survive during the war had now enormous amount of job to do and were now earning several times more than before due to effective local economy. But in both three countries, this feeling of economic prosperity between the members of Benelux became at a certain point an obstacle to the wish of a bigger, deeper union, because most of the people were happy with their new life and of their small and elitist union. They had started to see the creation of European common economy, the pulling backwards of less economically developed countries, and the loss of sovereignty and prestige. This fear of people also started to be felt in national governments, and in relation between the three states. Opposition starts to raise, and the implication of Benelux in the Cold War became a source of issues. Did Benelux really need to be held by the Marshall Plan? Wasn't the Marshall Plan a way of using the prosperity of the three states for the good of the US? Wasn't this monetary fund a way of forcing the Belgium, the Luxembourg and the Dutch to be dependent on a stronger economy? While a part of the population saw in the Marshall Plan a loss of national right and power, the Belgian Henri Spaak, along with the Luxembourg Joseph Beck, saw this collaboration with the US the opportunity of first basis on common intent between the West European states. By 1953, after being finally able to agree a protocol coordinating economic and social policy between the three states, they began to participate as separate entity within the Organization for European Economic. cooperation. The three partners gradually learned to speak with one voice and to adopt common position on international issues, while always defending their wish of creation of a politically, socially, and economically united Europe.
From Madrid, George Magos.
Hola from Spain. I'm gonna talk to you about Spain's situation between the Cold War period. The onset of the Cold War, and in particular its intensification during the Korean War, ended the period of Spain's total international ostracism. Successes in international relations stood in stark contrast to continued economic weaknesses. Per capita meat consumption in 1950 was only half what it had been in 1926, and bread consumption only half what it had been in 1936. Shortages and corruption were so bad that families were forced to pay black market prices, double those in the shops. Don't forget, at that period of time, Franco was in power.
Our French reporter, Christophe Stefanis from Paris.
Indeed, Julia, breaking news have been announced as the Treaty of Rome has been finally signed on the 25th of March 1957 by Belgium, France, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands and West Germany. The European Economic Community was established, fulfilling the wishes of many French decision makers. Firstly, politically and institutionally, the balance between supranational institutions and the intergovernmental dynamic reflected a broad consensus. After the establishment of the European Coal and Steel Community in April 1951, two Frenchmen believed that this cooperation could be pushed even further, Robert Schuman and Jean Monnet. After becoming a member of the French Committee of National Liberation, Jean Monnet stated that the European states must constitute themselves into a federation in order to achieve the necessary prosperity and social development. After his plan was accepted, the so-called Schuman Declaration on 9th May 1950 took place, where the production of resources was shared by the two most powerful countries on the continent. Monnet was a businessman who believed that the only way for greater prosperity in both France and West Germany was for both countries to develop a better and more positive relationship. He believed that greater cooperation between both nations would all but end any chance of another war between both nations. Well, it clearly signified the triumph of a very realistic and gradualist approach to building the European Union. This method was personified by Jean Monnet. The failure of the European defense community demonstrated that tremendous obstacles lay in the path of the final construction of a political union. Even though there was an agreement on the EDC, this plan did not meet with widespread support in France, therefore this led to the eventual defeat of the actual plan. Consequently, the new strategy aimed to adopt a process of integration that gradually incorporated diverse economic sectors and that established supranational institutions with increasingly political competencies. Exactly. The EEC offered many safeguard clauses, agricultural compensation and aid for overseas territories and former colonies, most of which were French. Contrary to France's demands in 1955, only a community procedure could activate these concessions, guaranteeing the consistency of economic integration. This gave economic agents the benefit of harmonization of the distortions of competition, social and customs legislation, taxation, etc., and of economic policies, while giving market forces a free rein in a suitable framework. Indeed, France was irreversibly weakened economically, militarily, and psychologically. With increasing anti-colonial sentiment with France, colonies began to demand independence. This resulted in long and violent conflicts, such as the war with Algeria, but in the end all French colonies would attain independence. Total deaths were almost 570,000 people, and 350,000 amongst them were civilian deaths. Although an unstable political environment hindered the implementation of the Marshall Plan in France, the situation was ameliorated by the fact that Jean Monnet and his collaborators in the Commissariat Général du Plan had formulated a precise program of industrial development which did not depend on any political party or cabinet to carry it out. Because US officials wished to support third fork governments and because they viewed the Monnet Plan as a model investment program, counterpart funds flowed out in 1948 and 1949. This support enabled the French government to continue funding the Monnet Plan, covered much of the budget deficit, and limited inflation. By early 1950, the French economy showed major improvements. Inflation seemed under control, industrial production showed rapid growth, and both standards of living and the balance of trade improved. France received almost $2,300 million from the Marshall Plan aid. France received almost $2,300 million from the Marshall Plan aid. Although the economic situation in France was grim, resources did exist. France managed to regain its international status thanks to a successful production strategy and political innovations. Industries were reorganized on a basis that ranged from consensual to conflictual, therefore producing uneven results. The Monnet Plan provided a coherent framework for economic policy, and it was strongly supported by the Marshall Plan. It was inspired by moderate Keynesian free trade ideas rather than state control. Although relaunched in an original way, the French economy was about as productive as comparable West European countries.
And now, Kostas Sigaros from St. Petersburg.
Hi, I'm representing the Soviet government. As the Western so-called reporters waste their time arguing about integration, meaning of course capitalist control over Europe, I would like to spend some time to remind you what it is that makes Russia an existing utopia for all of our comrades. To quote our dear comrades from the Hispano-Soviet Friendship Association, the Soviet Union is a success, not only for socialism but also for humanity. The Soviet Union was the first country in world history to have completely eliminated hunger, an achievement that countries as developed as the United States have never reached. This shows the high efficiency that the socialist system reached over time. In addition to eradicating hunger, the Soviet Union has been at the forefront of the global campaign for the eradication of smallpox and the establishment of networks of water, electricity, heating, and transport. The Soviet Union was the first country to have an entirely literate population. Training plays an important role, that of forging a new man with a socialist morality. As for economic policy, policies like the Marshall Plan may appear to be economic relief, but actually serve the purpose of imposing the US government's will on independent states. American policy aims to separate Europe in two blocks and breed hostility against the interests of the Soviet Union. CON, or the Council for Mutual Economic Assistance, was founded in 1949 by the Soviet Union, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Poland, and Romania. It is a brainchild of Joseph Stalin, may he rest in peace, and his desire to cooperate and strengthen the international socialist relationship at an economic level with independent states of Central Europe, who, by the way, have become Soviet-friendly through democratic process. We would like to remind the world of the progressive character of our great nation. For example, our courageous comrade Khrushchev gracefully acknowledged a few mistakes made by the earlier administration, and has taken massive steps to adjust them, despite the ungrateful people of Poland and Hungary who protested the incredibly successful 5-year plan. Also, the Soviet Union demonstrated technological superiority, with their pioneering scientists sending the first man to the moon earlier this year. And now to Nikolai Khrushchev. Our on-the-scene reporter who will talk about Russia's great sacrifice on defeating the fascist infection during the war, its aftermath, and popular belief here in Russia.
And now Louis Steed from Moscow.
I am a Russian journalist and who has lived many of the experiences of the aftermath of the Second World War. I am here to talk about the consequences of what happened after such a dramatic event. And so the consequences of the Second World War, what happened, the Marshall Plan, and what is the truth, what I think, what is my belief in this world and for the country and for Europe itself. So to start off, we had to make sure that the Germans paid off the reparations for the war. So we made sure that for our 23 million soldiers killed during the Second World War, that we would be able to re-rise Russia. So Russia became a very powerful nation, and whilst the other countries were getting themselves weakened. So Germany was way below us. And Stalin helped us lead the way, and it was very inspiring. So as well, we made sure that the other countries in Eastern Europe got reformed. So we put communism into those countries such as Poland, Czechoslovakia, Lithuania, Hungary, Yugoslavia, Romania, and even Bulgaria. They got to follow the path of truth, alright? That was very good, but they did not want to completely follow us, and they made complications along the way. So as well, the impacts of the Marshall Plan, it was disgraceful. Stalin made a strategic error, I must say it, but even though we had no choice but to refuse of collaborating with the Marshall Plan for the reconstruction of Europe, because they wanted to spread capitalism into our country, which was unacceptable, because communism is a true way and that they should follow us instead. This is the war that is still, I think, going on, and it's just wrong. Capitalism, they are the dangers, they are the monsters, so communism, we could not accept capitalism into Eastern Europe. So in the end, at the Paris Treaty, we just walked off. We did not want to do anything anymore with them. So that was that, and what happened after they invited many other countries, and we lost the opportunity of becoming even more powerful. So as well, I would say that the Marshall Plan made a big split between Europe, the Eastern Europe and Western Europe, because it was like after the Second World War, we had nothing else to say between us, and this really even severely more cut down our relationship. So now capitalism and communism were on the edge of a war. I believe that communism shall prevail. All right, communism is the right way, is the truth. It is. They do not see it yet, but that is what we must do. Europe, it is become a savage place. They keep on confronting us. They do not want to accept spreading communism into their countries, and yeah, that is it. That's all I have to say about Europe and its state at the moment. So thank you very much, and it was Nikolai Rushkov.
I'm the Greek delegate in Rome, and I convey you the huge news that the Treaty of Rome has finally been signed. France, Italy, West Germany, Luxembourg, and Belgium, and the Netherlands all made up the big steps signing the treaty and establishing the European Economic Community. The final step to the official economic European integration has been completed. Excitement is great. You can truly feel the euphoria here in Rome. Looking at a bright future which the Europeans will finally work together in a friendly atmosphere of cooperation to avoid any other disastrous world war which would bring the continent on its knees. To make sure the European citizens enjoy freedom, security, and a life with an increasing standard of living, which have been long craved. We must not forget that the difficult path that the countries have marched to achieve this, and we must not forget from where the idea roots and who were the protagonists. It roots back to the famous speech of Zurich of Winston Churchill back in September 1946, when he shocked the world, saying that the only way for the creation of the European family is a French and German partnership. This was shocking, of course, because just 1 year before, the French have been the German have been dominated France, and there have been long-lasting enemies since the creation of the two states. Then the idea was, of course, adopted by the great personalities of Monet and Schumann, with the first step being the European coal and steel communities 5 years ago. In the future, we hope seeing more countries join the first 6, even Greece, but it's interesting to refer why our country kept its distance in this economic agreement of common markets and free trade. As you know, Greece came out of the Second World War having felt the full wrath of it. 10% of the population was dead, and the political rift between the Greeks was greater than ever. As a consequence, the civil war broke out between the communists and the elected democratic government, which further destroyed the country, leaving behind ruin, death, orphans, and an extremely weak economy which was severely based on agricultural production. Political division and the dreadful economic situation brought the country on the verge of communism, and the people in virtual exhaustion, having to live with a standard of living 60% lower of France's, which made the European integration, of course, even more difficult due to obvious differences in economic parity. As a response to that, in 1948, our country was aided by the United States with military advisors and military equipment to finally help repel the communist threat that was marked with success by the end of 1949. And now the country was ready to begin its restoration. That happened with further American aid, which was given with a famous General Marshall Plan, which promised around $500 million to kickstart the economy and to trigger industrial investment to achieve growth. As you can understand, that was a huge amount of the time to kickstart the economy. Since we have been living an economic miracle, with the GDP often growing with double-digit numbers, and now with Prime Minister Konstantinos Karamanlis, the European vision can become a reality. From Rome, Nikos Zouridakis for the Greek Public Television.